Hello and welcome to another F12 video. My name is Mike Hewitt.
I'm Jacob Rains.
And we are, this is our fifth video in our 101 C# series. And the previous videos we worked with if statements and for statements and variables. And now we're kind of all going to put it together in something called, well, methods, but we're going to talk about functions first. Sorry.
Yeah, so a lot of
times they talk about methods first before functions, but he had a good point.
And a lot of times they also use the word interchangeably. So I've heard the word function, method, and I think you had subroutine came through in some documentation the other day.
And it's interesting because in other languages, functions and methods are kind of the same thing.
Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different.
Not. So, but in C#, go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, you'll hear the words used interchangeably. They're all pretty much the same thing with one slight variation, which is the return type. So we're going to write one right now and explain what it is, so we're not.
Okay, I'm going to get rid of all of this.
Back to our blank, simple
now
program.
We're down here.
So nice thing is, we already wrote a method and we didn't even know it, right? So here on line 5, which is the start of our program, you can see it says public static void main. And when we wrote that code, I said it's a bunch of gibberish, don't worry about it, just know it needs to be there, and we'll come back and explain it later. Well, today's the day.
Let me set this up first. There's an answer. We're going to say 0. Okay, we're going to say the answer is, and then that. Here, I know I'm typing a lot. Let's do a console. We're going to do a write line. Go ahead and while I'm filling this in,
explain what's going on line 5.
Kind of.
So, I said before that line 5 was where our program starts at this main. What you see here is a method. And it's a fully flushed out one here pretty well. So it starts with the word public. All methods start with a word that just tells you their permission level. And as a matter of fact, a lot of other things will start with that too. Public just means anybody can use this code. Static is a special requirement for main. We'll get to that later. Void is a return type, which it doesn't have one. And main is the actual name of it. So every method has to have a unique name. Now the point of a method, outside of main, is to make a chunk of reusable code that we can use over and over and over again. So Michael, what do you got going on here? Add two numbers together. First number, we're going to read off the console from the input.
What did
Those are strings.
Do? Yeah, yep, you're right. Cool. Okay.
So we're going to get two numbers.
So now what we have is we have this answer, right? And we want to add these two numbers together.
Yeah.
We could just add them together, but let's do it much.
Let's make a
little better.
Not the best way to do it, but we're going to do it in a way that illustrates a method.
Okay.
So let's go down to line 20-ish.
Yep, I'm going to comment this out just so it doesn't break any code.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're going to write a method. So I said every method starts with a permission. So we're going to say public. For right now, everything you do is going to be public. I can't imagine anytime soon we're going to get into something that isn't public. But later on down the road, we will. And we're going to say static. And I don't want you to get into the nuances of what static is either. But for right now, everything's going to be static.
Yep.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. Every method has input and output. And in full C# fashion, it's backwards. So the first thing we need to define is the output. So we're adding two numbers together. So just without even writing any code here, our input is going to be two numbers.
Yep.
And our output is going to be one number. So our output is going to be an int. Then we're going to give it a name.
Which we can call that anything we want.
Absolutely anything. And now we need to define our inputs inside the parentheses.
So we're going to say input first number and int second number. Okay.
And those use the standard syntax of any variable declaration. So,
yes, that could be a string. It could be a decimal.
Yeah. So it's data type, variable name, data type, variable name. We can put as many as we want, and we just separate them with commas.
Yep.
You can have 0 inputs. You can have dozens of inputs. I've actually seen into the 50s before. There's a practical limit.
And there is also a pattern if you've noticed. This is called a code block. So inside of our for, everything that was happening inside that for, all the i's was inside that block. So which it can access outside, but nothing outside. No, everything outside can access in, but you can't make a property here and access it outside, right?
Yep.
And so if what we're doing is we're creating this, and these are actually being created, we're actually passing them in, but it's the same as this technically. This is going to be used inside of here, but we can also pass something into that. I hope that wasn't very confusing.
A little bit.
But you'll get it here soon.
So let's write a line of code on line 22, and I want to do this longhand.
Yep.
So let's say int, and I'm going to call the variable sum, S-U-M, right, equals first number plus second number. There we go.
Okay.
Now, we have you notice there's a red squiggly underneath adding numbers, and if you hover over it, it's going to tell you that you're missing something.
Not all code paths return a value.
Right. So, because we have a return type, which is int, it's that third value there, the one right before the name.
This is what is coming back out of.
The one right before the name is always the return type, which means this needs to give back a value.
And it doesn't need to be named because it just doesn't need to be named. It's not a variable you're going to be using. It's whatever's coming out of this.
So we do that with a command called return.
And there you go. It already kind of knows. So we're going to take that sum and we're going to return.
So after we're finished doing whatever calculations or whatever work we've done inside of this method, we're going to take the result and return it. So
now,
what does that mean? Well,
we can take this right here.
Well, before we do that, hang on.
Okay.
We got one more thing we got to do, which is we got to convert those strings to something else.
I was going to do it. Okay. You're right. I was going to do it right into the method.
I was going to say. I was just going to say. This is what I was going to say. Just int p1. Just I wanted to have different variable names so that it's clear that the name didn't matter. So int p1 equals, and then we'll just do convert. Not the best way to do it, but actually that right there. Yep. That right there too. Okay, so we're going to set the p1 equal to the first, but we're going to convert it to an int32. So instead of being a string of, for example, 1, 0, we're going to make it the value of 10.
Yep.
We talked before in one of the other videos about the difference between a string of a number and actual being a number.
So P1 would be 10, where first would be
a 1 and a 0.
Like that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so now we have the answer, and now what we're going to do is call this. So to call a method, it's exactly this, plus that, but we need to pass this one and this one in. So, and they have to be ints. That's why we couldn't pass the first, because they're strings and it doesn't work. So we pass this. As you can tell, it's still broken because we have 2 P2.
And once the number of parameters match and the data types match, the errors all go away.
One more thing.
Nice.
I'm just going to do this so we can save ourselves some time. So then what I did, I stuck it in this do loop. So this will never stop looping. But that's okay. We can just
close the program
down. So now we can say so we can do 1, enter, 2, enter, and it says, okay, the answer is 3. Now we can do, I'm just going to palm it, well, I almost palmed the exact same number.
Didn't you?
There. And now,
I'm going to trust its math.
Yes. So there you go. And then it will just keep doing it forever if I wanted it to, until I close it out.
Now, that's not particularly useful in and of itself. What we use methods for, or functions, is to make code reusable. So if there were multiple places in the code where I had to run the same calculations over and over and over again, rather than repeating that code in multiple places, I would wrap it up into a method or a function and just use it once.
Or maybe you are making this and someone else in your company is making this, and this is, you're just abstracting this away. They don't care what it is. They're just going to be using that method. That's another idea of it. Anyways.
All right, let's write a method.
What?
Let's write a method.
Okay.
An actual method. So we're going to come right underneath our function here.
Okay.
And a method and function are almost identical.
Okay.
The only difference is methods don't have a return type.
Okay.
So let's write this. Public, because we have to have permissions. Static, because everything in here is static. Instead of a return type, we can't just leave it blank. So we're going to put the word void, telling it that there is no return type. And let's call this one do math.
Okay.
And we're going to have it take, I'm going to say 0 parameters. So I'm going to do a little things different there. It has no inputs, which isn't required. You can still put inputs on it, but it has no return type either. And let's take all of the code from 11 to 21. Let's put all of that inside of our do math.
This one, 2 or 10 or no?
Oh, we'll leave 10 out.
Okay.
This is all arbitrary.
Okay.
We'll need the int answer brought in there from line 7, because that variable is used inside there. All right, so a couple of things here. One, now on line 23, we are declaring a variable, actually 23, 25, and 27. We're declaring variables inside of our method, which are only accessible inside of that method. We're calling out other commands on line 24, 26 to do the console.write. All the work that we were basically doing before, we're doing inside this do math. Now, back up on line 11, we're going to call out this do math. And now we can run the program, and we should get a near identical, actually it should be an identical function.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Not tab. I knew what you did as soon as I saw it.
I didn't hit enter. There we go. 6 plus 6, 12.
Now, to illustrate this, Mike, why don't we put a break on line 10?
Okay.
And let's just step through this.
Okay.
Because this is all over the place now compared to the programs we wrote before. We wrote programs that did loops, and we saw that the execution pointer would wrap around over and over. But we have a do loop calling a method, calling a function. So this one gets a little wild.
So now what we were doing, we were using this called step over, and then there's this other one called step into. So if I keep hitting what we were hitting, F10, you'll see...
It is going to pause for us to do the input. Yep. You're back on line 12.
Okay. And then it will do that. It did never go down in here. It did, but what we are doing is stepping over this. So
Yes.
I'm going to step over.
So instead of seeing it, if you were just doing the step over, you'd see it go 9, 10, 11, 12, 9, 10, 11, 12, 9, 10, 11, 12, 9,
Right.
10, 11, 12.
So now I'm actually hitting step into, which is F11, and now it's going to go into here.
And it was always doing that before.
Yes.
But it was just saying, well, we don't need to see the detail. I'm going to go ahead and do all that and just...
Because sometimes you're stepping through code and you know that method works. I'm very 100% sure. I don't need to go in and go through that whole line of code.
So,
But in this instance, we want to. So now we're stepping in here. And what did you want to see?
well, it's all going to be pretty straightforward until you get to line 32.
Yep. Okay.
Except for, what was the string you put in?
Oh, what was the string I put in? I didn't put anything. Okay, well
Oh,
that. Oh, I don't know. Sorry, my bad. Let's just stop that. Um, okay, I'm gonna. Okay, let's do 4. Step into. And we'll do 9. Now, okay. So now we have these as
4 and 9.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we step into here, we're jumping up in here. And we are now adding 9 and 4, as you can
Now,
tell.
the interesting part about this is, for people that are new to programming, the variables we passed in were called P1 and P2.
Yes.
But when we got in here to the adding numbers, they're now called first number and second number. The names don't have to match, and matter of fact, they almost never do.
That's a good thing because yes, I that had tripped me up way long time ago. Yes. What else do you want me to do? Keep going.
Yeah, so we're going to add those two numbers together.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get sum, which is going to be equal to 13.
13.
And now we're going to return 13. So,
So
as soon as we hit that return statement, it's going to jump back to where we came from.
And when I step to the next one, you'll see the answer is now 13.
Yeah.
Because this was returned as an int, which was spec here, which was an int.
I expect to see questions in the comments for what we didn't explain well.
Yes, yes. So what we've done is we've jumped to here, and then we jump to here. So we are still going in a line.
Within the method.
Something. So here we'll go to here, and then we keep going in a line here and then back. So it is still going in sequential order, but we have kind of moved stuff around. It's kind of like a what are those books called? Choose Your Own Adventure book.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what we're doing. We're jumping around on the pages.
Each method in and of itself is in order.
Yes.
But because we're calling out methods, and we haven't really gotten into the power of it. The power of it is when you call out a method in multiple places.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there are cases where even though code is only called out once, you still wrap it up in a method for readability.
Yes.
But
Mm-hmm. What else do we want to put in here?
well, let's go ahead and see what happens when we hit the end of the method, because we haven't really explained that yet. So when you hit the end of the method, which is one more line, it's going to go to that last bracket, and then it's going to jump back to where the do math was called out from.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to loop around. And as you pointed out earlier, we did not write a way to get out of it. So
I'm actually going to stop that, and we'll just move this from false. Oops. We'll move this to. Oops.
You're having all kinds of
false.
False. There we
So
go.
now we'll only go through this once. And
By
we'll
the
turn
way,
that back on
we didn't mention this, but it's worth bringing out now. Everything in C#, absolutely everything, is case sensitive.
Yes.
False is spelled F-A-L-S-E, all lowercase. Any other variation, capital F or all caps or anything else, will not work.
Mm-hmm.
All commands, all variables, everything in C# is
not work.
case sensitive. And you know what? I probably should have mentioned that about 5 videos ago, because I bet you somebody got hung up on that.
Now, here's one of the other things. We could, if we create this, we have a problem because they're named the same. But this easily, it could be, these are two different methods because they are spelled differently.
Yes, because one's capitalized and one isn't.
Yes.
No two methods or functions can have the same name, generally.
Without overloading.
There is a couple of exceptions there, but as a rule, as a guideline, they can't have the same name. And like you pointed out, everything is case sensitive.
Yeah. Everything.
Everything.
A
lot of languages are very forgiving on that.
Yes.
C# is not one of them. So I like it that way myself, but I've gotten used to it. So
And there are reasons for that. Sometimes a variable capitalized is a different accessibility. One might be
people,
private, one be public, but that's something later on.
yeah, people get into what they call naming conventions, which is rules for how they name their things, and it gets almost religious or political. I mean, people get really upset over their naming convention being the right naming convention.
So everything has an access modifier. If it doesn't have an access modifier, it is
Private.
private. I would assume it was public, but you're right.
It's,
I've always just put them on there.
it's public in
Other
Swift.
languages, yes.
Swift, but everything in C#, if
Don't
everybody always puts a public or a private or a permission on it, but technical term is access modifier, but nobody uses that word.
Yes.
Everybody puts permission at the start of their methods, but if for some reason you didn't, it defaults to private, which means that nobody outside of basically this file can call out that method.
Don't worry about static at this point.
I mean, really all you need to know about static for right now is our main is static, and static methods can only call static methods. As a rule.
It can return back something, or it can turn back nothing. If it returns back nothing, it is a void, and a void does not need a return. But if you are returning something, it has to have a return.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is this. So if I said, I know we're kind of beating a dead horse sometimes. If I return back this, it will fail because I am returning back a string, not an int. So very
return
important.
types have to match.
They have to match.
Yeah.
And then,
Number of parameters can be anywhere from 0 to as many as you want.
is there a limit?
There is a limit, but you're never going to hit
You
it.
should never hit that. And at some point,
I think the compiler has a limit of like 250 or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you go past 20, you're probably doing something wrong.
and at some point, it just is almost unreadable and is really hard to work with that. And
Yeah, that's what happens if you get too many. And there's ways of passing more data, but we'll get into later that are better than adding more parameters. But
Right.
if you get too many parameters, it gets difficult when you go to call, what they call it, when you execute a method, it's called calling it out. When you call out that method, you have to pass as many parameters as it's expecting, and getting those to line up and be in the right order. Because the first parameter goes to the first parameter, and the second parameter goes to the second parameter. If you get too many, it starts getting complicated.
And how you know it's a method is these two little things. So both of these are like that, but then when you're calling it, you need to call those as well. So as you can tell, I can immediately look at this and know, oh, that's a method.
Because the parentheses at the end.
Yeah, and I can know this is a method and this is a method, and even readline is a method. And
It's a method that was written for us. but
yes,
yes.
To int. We just know that they're methods because of these little parentheses. And so, yeah. And yeah, I think that's all I have.
We're going to get into some more advanced
Oh,
topics
yeah,
later.
definitely.
There's a lot of different ways you can pass parameters or not pass parameters in certain cases.
But this is a really good start. I like this.
Or make different combinations of parameters. But yeah, I think we got the basics covered here. So I think we're good.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.